All right. I'm so excited today for this podcast. I guess invited my two co-panelists from Open Forum, which is on Mondays at 6 p.m. You should listen to that on PHLV radio. We talk about politics, but in this show, I kind of wanted to do. I'm so moved by all that's going on with Britney Spears' memoir, "The Woman in Me," and I know two of my co-hosts are really on top of pop culture. So I specifically invited Rachel and Mitch to come have a discussion with me on it. So I want to try to get to them because I know they have interesting insights. But I want to give a little bit of a background on this book. It is currently like the best-selling non-politician memoir, I believe, in history. In the US alone, it sold like 1.2 million copies in its first week. So it's obviously a number one bestseller, but also worldwide, it sold 2.4 million copies. This is like unprecedented numbers, but I think people are obviously very interested in Britney Spears' story in her own words. So with these juggernaut sales, I want to hear from both of you. What do you guys think? Why do you think this is selling so much and doing so well? Let's start with Rachel.
Oh, thank you for having me. You know what? And to be honest, I don't usually buy books, anything, and on Amazon. And so actually I had a friend on, Facebook just talking about it. And she said, oh, she read it, she loved it. And I was like, you know what? I was thinking of buying it and reading it. And there were a few things that I was curious about, like that conservatorship. And I'm at that point right now in the book where she just got into it. So I was just talking to Mitch about it. I was like, I wanted to know, like, how did that happen? How do we, and, politics included, like, I like how we could kind of put politics in it, but what kind of, I don't even follow Britney, by the way. I'm not like a huge fan or anything, but I was curious about her because we see her everywhere. And the thing that I was curious about was, um, like how can like well for when people were posting about how she got off the conservatorship and then all of a sudden they're all making these memes about her, sword fighting and stuff like that. Oh, she should still be on it. And as a conservative, I was like, hey, shouldn't we talk about people being, emancipated, being individuals and having freedom and liberty? How could we say, oh yeah, the dad should take over her finances and her livelihood? She's a grown woman. And I didn't understand how did she get to that point where the parents just was allowed, or the dad was allowed to take over her finances, her schedule, even forced her to take medicine or whatever it was that they were forcing her to take. That really stood out to me. And but I love the little sub stories in there. Like I had to look up a couple of the co-stars um from oh, I don't know who it was, but it was some other people she was talking about. Now I wanted to see who she yelled at. There was a part where she said she yelled at someone from Zoe 101 or whatever that was supposedly bullying her sister. And I was like, oh, I want to go find out who that was. And she apologizes. It's funny. She doesn't really name everyone, but like there was a photographer she was involved with, but he was married. So she just calls him the photographer. And but then she said sorry to the young teen she yelled at. She goes, and some people she was mean to. And it was just, and it's written, the book is written like, it does sound like her. It's kind of like just simple language. It was really interesting. I liked it. I'm still reading, I'm in the middle of it still, but like I was talking to my husband, like how she got into it. And he's like, there's no way that she couldn't just get a lawyer and fight it off. Maybe you guys know, like, why didn't she research it herself? I know her phone was confiscated, but like how did she not know to go get her own lawyer? I'm reading that part right now, like where she goes, yeah, everybody's like, get your own lawyer, but I was told I wasn't allowed to. So
Right. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, Rachel. Mitch, I want to hear kind of maybe a general overview of why you think this is selling so much, and then we'll kind of hone into those finer details Rachel brought up.
Yeah, again, thank you, Mark, for having me on. When it comes to like pop culture, I think that's where it comes from, right? I didn't read the book, but I was interested in this conversation because Britney Spears is a pop icon. You know, I think there's a nostalgic factor right here, and especially with a lot of the things that like from the 90s, like even something as close as like Matthew Perry passing away. You know, there's this idea of like the 90s and early 2000s that a lot of people are nostalgic for, right? And I think that is why it's a big aspect into why we are learning about this and all this stuff, and just in her story altogether. I think people just are very much interested, like with everything that she has gone through. I think it is just quite interesting in itself, just as a storytelling. It's not even over, right? And so I think it's one of those things where people just kind of want to look back, as far as like, again, one of her songs I was looking up was like Kill the Lights and all that stuff way back when in 2011. And then she did stuff with like the Black Eyed Peas, or at least Apple the App, you know, like back in 2012, you know, and like Scream and Shout. And so like I can place these songs where I was in my life, like pairing it up, especially like during my time in the Air Force and everything. And so I think, so point being is, I think because she is has that X factor, which she was on. You know, I think because people recognize the name, I think people are very much interested in her life. So I think it plays a lot with a lot of her pop culture and everything. So yeah.
Mitch, very fine points there, but I was always also thinking, Britney Spears hasn't had a top 10 hit since 2012, but after the conservatorship, as Rachel had mentioned, there was so much attention around that in the Free Britney movement that she ended up scoring a top 10 hit, top five even with Elton John last year, and got back pretty much on the radar. But to your point, we've had this. I know when she first came out, I was actually in starting college at the time when "Baby One More Time" was a hit. I never really liked. I didn't get her, and then after she kept releasing hit after hit after hit, she finally got my attention, and from 2001 in the VMAs when she did the I'm a Slave for You Snake performance that angered PETA, and then to when Toxic was released, and that was such a huge song for her. Oh my goodness. But one of the most poignant ones, which we'll get to in a little bit, is that single right after Toxic in 2004, a song called Every Time, which I always thought was so powerful, but ended up through this memoir, we realized exactly why that song was so emotional and powerful. And we'll get to that in a bit. But 2007, after she had her kid, she was walking barefoot and had, shaving her head, all these things that were very unusual. She stumbled out on her iconic VMA performance of Gimme More, looking dazed and confused to the world, but getting through her performance, and it became a pop culture moment there, to her huge comeback, her true comeback in 2009 when her Circus album was released and the ensuing tour, and then hit after hit. I think she scored like 5 number one hits in that tiny 2-year period. And then after that, she kind of faded away. So it's really nice to see this comeback. And I think to your point, Mitch, there is that nostalgic factor. But these days, when the book was released, the first major headline was that of Justin Timberlake. And I want to hear both your thoughts on some of the allegations. I won't get to it because I know both of you are well versed on what exactly she revealed. So I'll let you guys get to it. Rachel, you wanna tell everyone what those allegations were and your thoughts on it?
So my kids, I listen to my kids. They're my twins are 25, and they're like talking about some memes about Justin Timberlake playing the guitar while she's on the floor. And I was like, shut up. And they're like, it's in the book. And so I read that part. I was like, are you serious? So she talks about, and it sounds like she took probably the abortion pill. So and oh my gosh, if anyone hasn't read it, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. So she says that they Justin didn't want her to go to the hospital. So she took the pill, and they were just going to be at home, and she was going to pass, let it happen. And she said she was in so much pain. And she said, if I would have known it was going to be that painful, I would have taken something for the pain. And she didn't. So she said that at one point, she was on the floor, bathroom floor, in pain and holding onto the toilet. And all Justin could do was grab his guitar and play music for her to soothe her. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, he didn't. But what happened shortly after was when he left her. It seemed like shortly after that. And I hate to say it as a female, I'm just saying, all I could think in my head, I don't know if she thinks this way, but did he kind of like look down on her for doing that? Is that why he distanced? And it seemed like there was a pattern with her, with Justin Timberlake, and then with Kevin Federline, that after a certain point with Britney, the guys just wanted to ghost her. Like, it was weird. And so Justin Timberlake seemed like he was distant. She goes, oh, I could tell we were distant at that point. I was like, okay, right after that, that's kind of traumatic. Like, you go through this grueling, like, and she said it wasn't a real tragedy or something. It didn't really affect her for some reason. She said it wasn't like kind of a big deal. But I felt like, to me, Justin seemed to take, like, right after, he took off on her. He ghosted her, like, after that. He broke up with her. So I could see why, you know what? And she wrote about how, oh, Justin was on top of his game. And I'm sorry, but I had some friends at that time talking about it being like very pop culture-ish. The stuff she was writing, she was right. A lot of people were in love with Justin Timberlake. He was on top. And she said she was at her lowest, he was on top. He was on Rolling Stone. He was like sexiest guy alive or whatever. And I had a friend that was like just going gaga over him. And, and she was right. At that time, he could do no wrong. While she was at her lowest point, he was on top of his game. And I don't know if you got to that part, but I mean, I'm sorry, but as a female, that's kind of it. I would have played that in my head, like, did he look at me like I was trash after I did that? And that's why he broke up with me. That's what, if I was Britney, I know it's kind of cruel, but as a girl, that's what I would have thought. Because it was soon after. It seemed like it, the way she wrote it, it seemed like right after or soon after he broke up with her. So I don't know, maybe you guys remember better what the timeline was. It seemed like that to me.
Yeah, I'll jump in. And so this is one of the things that I actually did want to talk about. And so I had to look at the timeline and everything. So I guess the relationship was like from like 97-ish to going into that 2002, somewhere around that time frame. And then every time the song that Marc was mentioning came out in 04. So like, obviously it's being affected her, right? And so it gave it enough time for her to write the song, film the song, and all that stuff, right? And so obviously she had those thoughts ahead of time, but that song just came out later, right? Through productions and post-production and all that stuff, right? My thing is, I think, and it's quite sad altogether, right? You're losing a life. She is regretting it. She wish she wish she kind of kept the baby, and she wished that Justin was that leader to be like, hey, I'll be the father type of thing. And apparently he didn't want to be the father at that time, right? And part of that is celebrity culture. They are 100% on the rise at this time, right? Both of them, and in pop culture and all that stuff. But part of it is in culture altogether, right? And this is something like, it's interesting, like both of these individuals, Justin and Britney, from my understanding, they come from like the South, like what should have been like the Bible Belt, right? And I would have hoped and prayed that they would have been stronger to be keeping the baby. And and what sucks here is, like, I think they would have stayed together. I think they would have been the most powerful power couple if they stayed together, had a child together. And because he, like, again, Justin was on the rise, and same thing with Britney. Both of them was like the new heirs of pop, right? And so having this royalty in a sense, with a child, I think would have solidified their status in that. I think they would have stayed together. And it is just so sad that this happens, right? Again, if Justin was in a better place, not just with his career, but as a dude, like, hey, you know what? I'll take the responsibility. This was unforeseen, but like, let's be a father, let's be a man and take responsibility because I am that father, right? And it's just so sad, like when I see all of these people talk about like abortions and regretting it, and it's just one of those things where I really, it's a shame what society, what quote unquote liberal progressive ideology and all that stuff has done, and then also just paired with like being success, like you can't, you have to put success over your own family type of thing, and it's quite sad. So Marc, do you want to add on to that song and everything with that, all that stuff?
Yeah, there's so much to comment on. I think, one of the things, it's so funny because Mitch, you have a very different perspective from the way I saw Britney and Justin. First of all, Britney really grew on me and during that time, especially when that In the Zone album came out. That's really when I believe she blossomed as an artist, and she was writing. Every Time was the first song that she wrote by herself, basically. Most of what was done before was like a factory of hits being written to her by her record label. And when I heard that song, and it always reminds me of my late mother, my mom loved that song. And, she doesn't really like this type of music usually, but, that song was so powerful. And I think a lot of people, even I've looked at the comments, have really felt that the spirit of her sadness was captured so perfectly in that song. The spirit of loss. And when you look back at the video now, you see that she actually, has that maternity word scene where you see that woman giving birth, and really ties it all in 20 years later. Can you imagine? She kept very quiet, and there's so much to talk about in that. Her strength in staying silent, despite the fact that she was being maligned, as she said in the book, as a harlot, that people were, praising the person that, she knew was kind of responsible for her termination of her pregnancy. And to hear the details, and Rachel, also to your point, oh my goodness, what a powerful point to really hone in on the fact that he's tone deafly playing his guitar and had no empathy whatsoever for what she was going through at the time, almost like a total narcissist. And guess what? Back to what I was saying, Mitch, where I disagree with you. I never liked Justin Timberlake. There was something about him that felt very fake, that felt very manufactured. And I love that type of music. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I am not too cool for pop music. I love the Backstreet Boys. And in fact, NSYNC stuff I liked as well. It was Justin that always bugged me. There was something very narcissistic about that guy, that he was all about himself. And when you hear this stuff, and I think that is why the public has now rallied towards Britney Spears, they're seeing what was underlying and what people felt for a while. And I always thought, why is he getting away with it? Like when he released Sexy Back, I thought that was the worst song I've ever heard. I still don't like that song till this day. And I felt that it was too, I hate to say it, just like what Britney was saying, it felt like it was trying way too hard to be black. And that's the thing that, there are certain artists that do it so well, like George Michael, I think in the 80s, really, he scored a #1 R&B hit. And I thought he was amazing because there was true soul there. With Justin, it just felt so manufactured. And we all know that Timbaland was behind all of that. And let's get to Timbaland right now. Oh my goodness. He had to apologize for his comments about Britney Spears when the memoir first came out. I think he underestimated the public's rallying towards Britney. And, like Rachel said in the beginning of the show, what has struck me, and I think struck a lot of people from the reviews that I've been reading about Britney's memoir, is she speaks in a very real way. It's not like a Meghan Markle that's going out there and milking fame for fame's worth, you know? Britney really genuinely, you feel like she's telling her story, and she's not even vindictive. She's not saying, "Oh, I hate Justin for all he did." She's like, "This is the facts and I'm going to set it straight." So those are my comments on that. And yeah, I was thinking, you know, what I thought that the Timbaland apology was kind of shocking, but not really. What are your thoughts on that, Mitch?
I really didn't hear what Timberland get to say, so I'm just going off of what you're mentioning right now. And so, but I'll jump back with like the Justin Timberlake. Obviously, yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from as far as him doing his solo career, especially after In Sync. And so, yeah, I can definitely see him trying to whether play the role or try to market himself and all that stuff. And yeah, I'm sure like maybe well, as an artist, I can appreciate certain things. Not every one of his things was really cool. I did like Senorita back when it came out, right? And so there's a few things that I did like. And I guess I kind of appreciate Justin because he definitely broke out into SNL, into acting, and just as an artist, I liked what he was doing. Like even going on the movie The Social Network, right? And so he was very doing well for himself. I enjoyed it, but like again, to your point, like um, he may not be a great as a person in real life, right? And so I did not pay attention to. I was more on eyes as far as what he was putting out as music and acting, and I personally I enjoyed it. But obviously the book Britney's book shows some highlights of a different light. So again, I only wish he was a better person in that, especially going back to with the whole Britney passing her child. And so yeah, I wish he was a better father or in that moment. So yeah.
Rachel, thoughts?
I read quickly the apology. Oh my gosh. Well, you know, the Crimea River. I mean, we all knew. We're all looking at Britney like, oh, okay, it's about you. And she said, yeah. And then he got this model in the video to look like her. And but as far as Jim Timberlake, the part that to talk about, like, I did laugh, I did cry, I did, you know, yell when I was reading this book, to be honest. The part that I cracked up was when Britney said, I think it was Faye or somebody was like imitating Justin Timberlake when he saw, I forgot which rapper, and he said for shiz. Oh, it was Genuine. It wasn't a rapper, but Genuine. And he's like, and so she teased him about being trying so hard. And I love, you know what? I like inside baseball stuff. That's why I was like, I think the intriguing thing about this is because it's Britney. And she was at the top of like all the parties, of course. She was up there like with Madonna, you know, and she even says she idolized these people and, you know, or at least looked up to them. And here they were visiting her. So knowing all this inside stuff, I was like, ooh, juicy stuff, right? And but that part was funny because she was saying that he was, yeah, he doesn't, she doesn't really, I think, criticize him. She doesn't go hard on him like how she could. And I think the backlash that is going on with Justin Timberlake, at first I was like, well, maybe it wasn't totally his fault. But then as I'm reading it, I was like, you know what? That's true, because I was living that moment where I had people like on my timeline just, oh, Justin Timberlake, he's so sexy. He's like, you know, oh, his wife is so fortunate and all. Yeah. And I kind of agree. I didn't like either NSYNC or Backstreet Boys. And to me, Justin Timberlake was a try hard. I felt like he was trying hard to be black. I'm sorry, but yeah, I felt that way, and that's why whenever, you know, I hear his stuff, and I'm like, I could never get into it because it just didn't seem genuine to me, and it just seemed like he's a good dancer. I'll give you that. He's a good dancer. He can sing, but that whole image.
Not according to his latest video. Did you see that, Rachel, that I
No.
posted? The one where he's like showing off his dad moves?
Yes. Oh, that one was funny when you said that. Yeah, the dad, something a dad.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
face
you're
he
right.
made. I'm so sorry. Like, I think it's questionable now whether he's a good dancer. Let me tell you, I will give him credit that he picked good producers, the ones that were on the rise, and he made, a name for himself. But I want to say this before I forget: is I feel like his songs have not stood the test of time.
Yes.
Uh, I think compared to a lot of Britney Spears catalog, time has told and time has judged their catalogs, their respective catalogs, very differently. I think Britney was more of a slow burn. I think she. A lot of people are now going back to her catalog, reliving some of those great moments. Like I heard that Toxic didn't even hit #1 when it was released, but it's now one of her classic songs. It's a staple at Halloween parties. you know, it's
Mhm.
yeah, these type of things that I feel like her music has stood the test of time, and every time goes without saying. I mean, that song you can listen to it today, and it's as raw and as beautiful as when I first heard it in 2004. Mitch, what are your thoughts on that? Comparing the two, Britney and Justin, I really feel like Britney's catalog has kind of like stood the test of time.
Yeah, we're looking right now as far as what songs actually like as recent, that kind of like that Justin put out. One of it I guess was back. I was looking for Mirror, that he put out back in I think 2012 or something like that. So that was rings my mind, but I can't think of anything recently. I guess that gives credit to your point. And so again, to me, I think when it comes to when it comes to Britney and Justin, I think Justin did I think he tried to branch out more towards his acting career, and then so he didn't really do the music, versus like Britney, who was a performer, right? And so she tried. I think didn't she try to do something like in Las Vegas as like as a residency? I believe I can't remember, but like
He sure did. It was a
yeah,
successful residency for 2 years.
yeah. So I think it's a different kind of comparison here. But if we're looking into a larger pop scale dynamic or scale, whatever, I think people would recognize Britney far more than they would recognize a Justin Timberlake. I think that is a very much fair assessment to have. So yeah.
I appreciate that, Mitch. I wanted to kind of shift the conversation over to the conservatorship. That's such an interesting and fascinating dynamic. And Rachel, I know you're getting to the meatier parts of the book right now with, their dad. There was a time, I think, during the Las Vegas residency when she couldn't even get the food that she wanted to eat, but she was working like a slave basically. So funny because she had a song called "I'm a Slave for You" in 2001, almost prophetic because it predicted what would be her life for a good 13 years. So thoughts on that, Rachel?
Yeah, I remember that. I that's why I was like, didn't she do something in Vegas? And I was like, wow, she was under that control. I don't know what it was that because I think just in the past year when she was finally fighting back and then she got off of it, I didn't like pay attention to her. So, again, I'm not a Britney follower or anything, and I think I felt the same way when she first came out. She was like my little nieces, they and all these kids were like, oh, Britney Spears, Britney Spears. But when she I vaguely remembered when there was talks about the dad taking over. And I like the part where, and like, one of the things that stood out that's still standing out a lot is how she points out how can everybody else, go on do drugs, waste their money, harm people, and do like all these, drugs and stuff. She goes, I was partying, I was, yeah, I was wild, but did I deserve to get, be put on lockdown by my dad, basically? And that kind of makes me concerned. And that's why when that was coming out and everybody's like, I know it's memeable, her slapping the the sword, her knives, I'm sorry, her knives. And they're like, oh, look at her, she should be under her dad again. I was like, still, no. That's not bad. I mean, she's not driving around intoxicated and hurting people. So I that I think a lot of she was pointing out a lot of sexism. I'm sorry, but the thing about Justin Timberlake and her in comparison, how he was treated versus how she was treated. And then she talks about like people gamble, guys can have sex all they want, and then I was supposed to stay pure and everything. And she mentions that, and she goes, and so, you know, I can't. And then they were talking about like the details. She couldn't like date people that, you know, without, and I was reading like they had to have like she had to do like her blood work and stuff like that. They were on top of her, like um talking about her sex history with potential boyfriends or something like that, or was it vice versa? They needed to do an NDA with the guy. Of course, I kind of understand that part though, but it was like all out of her control. It was just all her dad and the lawyers or whomever was controlling her handlers. So that's kind of scary. That's really scary as a person who likes freedom and everybody should fight for the individual freedom. Like, how come nobody came to her aid?
You
I,
brought up some great points, Rachel. I don't want to lose the points, and I want Mitch to weigh in because I think the most powerful point you just brought up is was it because she was a woman? Was it because, and then I was thinking while you're saying that, was it because of her level of fame? Because she reached a level of fame many did not and experience. You know, she's almost at the level of Michael Jackson, Madonna, you know, that kind of level of fame worldwide. You know, was that what justified the conservatorship? Mitch, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think one thing that kind of brought to my mind, and it's also because I just saw a commercial for it. There's like the Elvis Presley, right? There's a TV show called Priscilla, the wife, and all that stuff. But like the point being here is like I think there's two extremes, right? And so obviously the conservatorship of like where like it's all on lockdown as far as what you can like who you can date and all that stuff. Obviously, I think that's problematic. But at the same time, I think Britney does need at least some like check-ins because dancing with knives all over is like like yo like maybe she needs some help. I'm not saying that she got to be in some psych ward, but she's obviously dealing with stuff, whether it's her life or dealing whatever fame whatever, but obviously there needs to be some balance here. And what also like kills me is that I think a year or two she wanted to do this whole Catholicism type of conversion type of thing, right? And I was like, oh, cool. We're freeing Britney. She's finding God, you know, and all that stuff. And then I guess that's not coming out because she was doing these TikToks of like, I'm gonna go to church, and it was the most skimpiest thing. Like, maybe not. Good on you for wanting to go to church, but maybe not in that. And so my point here, going back to the conservatorship, is like again, I think Britney. I'm not gonna diagnose her, but like in a similar way, how people who are bipolar. I'm not saying Britney's bipolar, but in that instance, you know, people kind of like, hey, just check on up on her because again, I think you know social media can mess with your mind, and I think that is a factor of her going on social media and it is and affecting how her personality is, and it's not helpful for a celebrity, it's not helpful for some 13-14-year-old girl on social media either. And so but at the same time, like having her on lockdown on a conservatorship, like obviously that doesn't help either. So the both of extremes where she's totally free to I'm glad that she's not like other celebrities where she's drunk driving and making a mess. That's great, but at the same time it's still not good when you're on social media and you're dancing with knives. It's not a good look. Okay, so
You know, Mitch, I'm going to kind of push back a little on that because I feel like a lot of it, especially her subsequent responses to that Dancing with Knives video, it almost feels like she was trolling. And I think you know, especially when you hear the book, obviously a great narration by Michelle Williams on the audiobook. I mean, I was impressed with the excerpts I heard and her ability to convey that emotion. But back to you know, it seems like in that book, she shows an incredible self-awareness, an incredible humility and kindness. She really sold a lot of people over the years, including myself, because I just saw what a genuinely nice person she was. she's not like a mean spirited type of person. And like she said, I'm playing with knives, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm not hurting anyone. Maybe I'm going to hurt myself, but I'm not going to hurt anyone else. And I really, think that ultimately she is testing the boundaries of media in a way she couldn't for 13 years when she was locked up. And you saw a little bit of that pre 2008 conservatorship in her Blackout album. When she went and did the VMAs, she was just like, whatever, I'm going to do my performance and I'm not really going to put my heart into it. And, she tested the media that way. I think that, a lot of it could be a troll, So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Rachel?
Yeah, I think hey, it did well for her book though. You got to do something to get their attention. I thought, that I'm sorry, but when things go like memeable or whatever you want to call that, viral, I thought it was funny. And but then everybody was like, yeah, again, my true like libertarianish kind of self is like, no, she's still cool, she's still okay. Let her, navigate her own life. But to Mitch, so one of the things I wanted to say, like maybe the reason why nobody checks on her is because everybody around her, especially her parents, were using her. And I don't think she would trust them. And it's so sad. It hurts me because they're still around. Her parents are still around. And it hurts me when she says, like, all I want was a father that cared about me. And then my mom, here she goes. And that's what I felt like. Again, I'm not a Britney like fan or anything, but when I saw her promoting her book, the mom was promoting her book and everything she's saying, I was like, yeah, that sounds like you. And as someone who grew up on different strokes, and I think one of the things that we learned early on was what happened to Gary Coleman. And that was sad. Hearing like he was like when we were growing up, Gary Coleman, from different strokes was really big. And to hear that he ended up, towards his end of his life, he ended up being a security guard at some lot, and he was working regular jobs and his parents just stole from him. How many times we hear these stories about these parents just using their child stars? And, I think the first ones that I felt like really got it together was the Olsen sisters, twins. They made sure they made their money and they kept it, which is amazing because, these child stars, what do they know, And here are these parents. It's sad. Like, how as a mother, and she even says that, like, as a mom, I just want someone to look out for me or care for me. And here's my mom using me, saying I'm a bad person. I'm a bad, oh, I must be. And she goes, and I was convincing myself, maybe I was bad. And you could tell she's, I don't really follow her, but yeah, she sounds pretty nice in her words. She's like, I'm not a mean person. And, she doesn't, and she could go hard on Justin. And I'm just reading also the Timberlake apology. Yeah, he goes, I don't want to take sides, but he goes, I shouldn't have said, just when he did that song, Cry Me a River, he's like to Justin, like, she's going crazy, right? And he doesn't say anything. Of course, he played off of that, and she said that too. She goes, I felt like Justin was probably playing into that, oh, I need a reason to have this album. And what's a perfect scapegoat is Britney, to make her the fall guy for his album. Like, look, Cry Me a River is about her. And everybody's, oh, poor Justin, And I just like, damn, like I look at it, I'm like, yeah, poor Britney. Like, now I could see why her fans kind of defend her. I was like, I started feeling sorry for her. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent,
I
but
think it's really true. There's a level of exploitativeness that we see, and I've seen it actually throughout her career. And like I said, that's kind of what endeared me to her, because I said, wow, all these people, none of them have her best interests at heart. And especially the mother, there was one anecdote where the mother actually, when she was a freshman in high school, made her date a senior. And I thought that was pretty creepy. A mother shouldn't be doing that, but it's kind of very interesting, the dynamics there of a pair, a poor family, because really that's what they were. They're from the South, and at that time, Louisiana is still very impoverished in some regards. But especially at that time growing up, and I think they saw this pretty daughter that had a talent, and then they exploited the crap out of her. And I feel like, that's so sad. And of course, you would naturally fall for, boyfriends and romantic partners that would exploit her talent and her fame versus have her best interests at heart. And that's, I think, one thing that's really struck a chord. I know a lot of FilAms like us have, some sort of like feel a connection to her story, because I think there is a lot of that. It's the idea of, family is around our, pushed by our culture, saying, hey, we have to be loyal to our families. And I think Britney tried as hard as she could to be loyal to her family, but then finally, and probably why the conservatorship even happened. So I kind of wanted your thoughts, Mitch and Rachel. I'll start with Mitch, on your thoughts about how family dynamics and that intense loyalty to family, which is very prevalent in Southern culture, ended up becoming the undoing of her.
Yeah, and I think Rachel has a great point when I was mentioning like who's watching her, like, and then Rachel brings like, well, who can watch her? Like, who can she trust? Like, I think that is a very much a fair point when she's being exploited through her family and all that stuff. And going back to the conservativeship, I don't know, like actually, I do. Like, we as Filipinos, like, we have our own toxic stuff, like sending money to the Philippines. Like, I was watching this Instagram video of this mom or whoever saying like she cut off her family, and then she blocked them on Facebook, and then they try to reach out to her like, oh, we should make amends, we should do this and that, and then I guess in the line that they're messaging back and forth, she's saying like, let's make amends by giving us back money. And she like, excuse me? Like, you want to make amends so that you can have a lifeline back again? Like, and then she goes into, it's heartbreaking because like one of the people that she was sending money to was her goddaughter, sending it through like high school, and now she's like in college and stuff. But again, that in itself, like on a relatable level, it's toxic, like obviously we give money to our family because not because of obligation, or at least it shouldn't be. It's because we love our family and they need it and all that stuff. But once it becomes like not only reliant but like ungrateful, I think that's the key word here, right? That it becomes ungrateful, or it becomes expected out of just like obligation, then obviously not. Like, I would love to give money to you knowing that you're appreciative of it, but two, knowing that I don't have to, but I want to, right? And so it's that level of toxic within our own families. I'm glad that I don't have to experience that, but my biggest things is like the chismis in the family, the people like our family holds grudges, and that's unfortunate. It takes sometimes, as sad as it may be, someone passing to be like, you know what, that I shouldn't have done that. And so I'm around that age where I'm seeing titas coming around like, yo, like we're up in our 80s, like we can't be having grudges like this, and so I'll pass it on to Rachel. Like, what I guess going to Mark's question, like what do you feel about all of this toxic behavior, maybe Filipino culture pairing up with the conservatorship? And so I'll let you continue.
Oh gosh. My husband just walked in, so let me just say, yeah, we have this obligation, but I like with some Filipinos though, and maybe even Tita Josie feels that way. When your kids are well off, you don't usually live off of your kids though. I kind of have that sense. I don't know if it was like that with your family, but that was a sense with my family. Like, oh, they can't ask us at a certain point. They would stop asking us when we had our kids, our families. They wouldn't ask us for anything. But so my husband's in here. But so the Samoans, I don't know if you ever watched 90 Day Fiance, but the biggest one was the Swelu, and what was the girl's name? But that's a huge deal with Samoans. They have to take care of their parents above their own kids. So that one was like, and so when they were, I'm sure with, I know it's kind of another couple, but whatever. That was a big deal for that show, was they were that, and that was good for camera. And I knew, because I live it, where and a whole bunch of Samoans, that's the kind of the culture clash that we have, is that, well, the parents shouldn't be asking us if we're struggling. And so that was what was going on in 90 Day Fiance, was that. But as far as Britney, there was a part where before Zoe, her sister, Jamie Lynn, is it? Before she got big, she was buying her toys. And then at one point she came back and her mom was spoiling her and she was being rude. And she's, I like Britney, how she just said, she curses, by the way. She calls her a B. Like, she's just a straight B, talking to my mom that way. And she's unappreciative. And I built this house for them, and and I think she was willing to do that. She was willing to buy them a house and, take care of them. But then here comes the dad. I don't, she kept mentioning that he was a drunk, an alcoholic. Like, that, I think in the beginning was just so everybody knows, this is what she's dealing with, was her alcoholic dad. And he was successful at one point. She says, on Louisiana, where she was from, at Kentwood, we were well off. But then he started drinking, and then that's when he started losing his money. And I think he found a loophole on how to get money from her and live like a regular income from her. And that's really sad. And so going back to that, like, yeah, it's sad to think about like how your parents could use you like that. And to be Britney, and okay, so as a female, let me just tell you, the parts where I cried was the part where Kevin Federline was holding her in the pool, and he's like, all I wanted to do was be held. And she goes, yeah, like Madonna showed me how to be strong and everything, own the room, be your own person and everything, which is true. But at the same time, and I'm sorry to say, and I say this and it's hard, I know, in modern feminism world, it's hard to say, but honestly, my husband does look out for me. When I don't see danger, he looks out for me, like, stay away from these people. And I'm like, oh no. And the female side of me gets, oh no, let's be nice and everything. And Britney's too nice. You could see it. Nobody's looking out for her. And that's go ahead.
I
Sorry.
love what you just said, Rachel. I mean, what's really interesting is you do analyze how they found like her weak spots and then exploited it and then used it in the name of, it was very manipulative, and Mitch, so powerful. Thank you for really mentioning and talking about our kababayans, this like duty that sometimes goes beyond, above and beyond, and ends up becoming taken for granted and exploited. And I think this is where a lot of people are connecting to her story, because it's the whole, you want to be nice, but then people will just start taking advantage of it. Then they become shameless about it with zero remorse at all in the continuation of that exploitativeness, and then getting everyone else in on the exploitation. That's really what I saw about Britney's story that was so relatable to like Filipino culture. It was just like, oh my goodness, the entire family is now living off Britney. And she's the breadwinner. And to the point that they use the legal system to apply a conservatorship and just make her basically a modern day slave. I mean, this is human trafficking, I believe. It's labor trafficking is what it is. And it was just, even when the mom talks about it today, I just really doubt her sincerity. Maybe I'm biased, but I'm really feeling like, and Britney, yet in her book, has this kindness about, oh, I want to make amends with my mother. But I think that the mother is so toxic that it will take a long time for her to really change those colors. And she'd be best having a little bit of distance from that family. And those are my thoughts on it. What do you guys think, Mitch?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, especially with everything that's going on, I think I think it's on the parents now to be like, okay, we were way overboard with all this stuff and all this stuff, and it's gonna take them time, because I'm pretty sure, I'm just reading off of your guys' comments with everything in the book, and I think Rachel puts it right. Like, she's not like, Britney has all the rights to be angry and resentful and to be like lashing out, and apparently through your words, and obviously I'll just take it for what it is, and so she is being as graceful as possible with all of this, and just laying, like you were saying, Mark, just laying out the facts, and like, for good and bad, and she just telling it how it is, and maybe even not necessarily sugarcoating it, but just putting it in the most graceful, tactful way possible, right? And so again, I think Britney has already made her move, and I think she is growing and healing and all that good stuff that she needs to do. And I think, like you said, like, it's just a matter of time for, well, hopefully, sometimes these parents are too stubborn to change, right? And so we the hope and prayer is that her parents come around and actually take care of Britney, not in a physical, or not in like, or financial or whatever, just take care of Britney as like, hey, you're our daughter, and we'll be there for you, type of thing. Not any tangible way, but just more of a symbolic way, I guess, from
and mental health, right? To
yeah.
show, remember in the book, she really talked about, she just wanted to have a happy family. That's all she wanted. And after her stint with Disney as a Mouseketeer, she had like a year or two of normalcy, and she looks back fondly on that. And, I think that's what the parents, if I were the parents and I had done her wrong like that, that's what I would be going back to, and really showing sincerity versus, backhanded type of things. Like even the mom's like statement about, I would never get rid of her toys. Even some of the statements in there kind of rubbed me wrong. It felt almost like kind of backhanded, and also trying to reinforce that Britney's slightly crazy, which I don't think so. Because I think believe it or not, I would act the same way to troll the media. I think that's what she's doing. I think she's completely fine. And I think, in fact, everyone sees, I think it's because of her level of fame. They see that, oh, she's famous, and everything's under a microscope. So even her latest divorce, like with Sam Asghari, I felt like she probably just woke up to the fact that he was exploiting her. And maybe she's finally finding her personal power. And she needs to just be okay being alone and finding that strength within herself. And that's what the parents' priority should be. And I think the parents' job is to do that, is to build up confidence and independence in their children, and not use them as indentured servants. That's, where I'm at. Rachel, your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to know. Who's her latest husband, boyfriend? But yeah, she needs to be careful. There's a lot of guys. I mean, and I could see why Beyonce probably is with Jay-Z. I mean, they're kind of at the same level. And, we've seen this like with any very successful female versus, and we know this, the statistics of guys cheating is when a woman is on the top or above or making more. Jessica Simpson was, I can't forget what happened to Jessica Simpson. That was cruel. Even though Nick Lachey ended up with a Filipino. And then there was Whitney Houston. Well, I don't know. Whitney was finding some stuff out, and I'm a big Whitney fan. So finding some stuff out about her was kind of sad. But I mean, these women who are more powerful than their men, I look at Oprah, like she's still with Stedman. Like, you look at all these powerful women, and then they get with these guys, and if Britney would just come on, like, girl, these guys are going to use you. You're Britney. Like, why are you not going above Kevin Federline? Like, sorry, but I mean, and it seems cruel, but I get it, and as a female, and I have 3 daughters, I'm like, please, have someone equally yoked with you, type of thing, or at least, and I hate to say it, but with a guy, maybe that's why these guys are threatened. But you're right, that they could have been a powerful couple, Justin and Britney, had they stayed together. They could have been the Beyonce and Jay-Z, but yeah, I now, when, as you were talking, I remember vaguely, and again, I don't know why I follow these things, but Jamie Lynn and the mom were even backing up. Yeah, Britney cannot take care of herself. And I remember them going to the media and saying that. And I was like, really, for what? What was she really doing? And she shaved her head. And I was waiting for that part in the book, like when is she going to talk about why she shaved her head? And then she had the umbrella and she was beating this paparazzi's car door. I just, it did look crazy. And so it did. But again, was it enough to take her livelihood, like her rights to her own self, away? I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, I don't think it was that warranted, losing the rights to be your own person. But that's just me. I keep going back to that. That really hurts me. And then the parents exploiting her. So I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, Mitch.
Yeah, I think we really knocked it out as far as like when it comes to the conservatorship, I think it goes too far. But at the same time, like I said earlier, like I think she does need some folks to watch out for her. Maybe not her family, but at least someone who she confines in. I think so my next question for the group, and I don't know how much longer, Mark, you want to continue, but like where do we want to see Britney? Like what do you think is the next thing for her and everything? And so my thing, I mean, this is somewhat of a cop-up answer just because we're doing kind of like a podcast in itself, but I would love for Britney to do a podcast type of thing and just continue this stuff. And I don't know, because I don't see her dancing on stage, maybe singing. I don't know. I'm just thinking, how else can she diversify? So I'll bring it to y'all too. Like, where do you want to see Britney as? So that's just my take.
Great question, Mitch. And yeah, we're about hitting our time, but yeah, I definitely want Rachel to answer this too. For me, I just want her to make more music. Over the years, I've become such a fan of her actual music. I think ever since the In the Zone album, every album she's been put out has a lot of depth to it. It's all got different textures. Femme Fatale in 2011 was one of her best albums. One of her best songs, Hold It Against Me, which was the lead single off that album, was just a freaking masterpiece. Not only the song, but the video. So she doesn't have to be doing her 1999 or 2000 dance moves on stage, because I know that's exhausting. But, at her age, she can still make mature music. And it goes to show with her latest with Elton John, that cover ended up hitting #1 on the adult charts. I mean, that's a huge feat for someone that never played in that format before. So she's got a bright future with new audiences, old audiences. And so I want to see her back out there. And remember, in the book, she said she loves performing. So let her perform. But I love the podcast idea, Mitch. That's very genius. Rachel, your final thoughts?
Yeah, she seemed to really like performing. I think that's her thing. And so I think she would benefit from still doing what she loves doing, but have totally different people. She mentioned Faye or something, who was her assistant and seemed to look out for her. So I think maybe she could still be her assistant. As far as like a podcast, I don't know. If it's not too exhausting, maybe a reality show just to show herself. Because she kind of seems, I mean, sorry, but she seems a little ditzy. And well, then again, I watched Theo Vaughn. He's a little ditzy for a guy, and he does well for podcasting, like podcaster. So I'm like, maybe. And he's from Louisiana, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, something where she could be in control of her image. And I think for the Kardashians, that kept them in the spotlight. I still don't know what their talent is, by the way. But that was their way of controlling their image. In a way they could control it. So but her doing these TikToks and making people wonder, like, what is she doing? I just saw some others where she's just twirling around and just she's like doing something with her bikini bottom, and I'm like, okay girl, what's she doing? Like, so she needs to do something else besides twirling around in her living room, in her foyer. Like, I don't know what she's doing.
So she needs a creative manager, is what you're saying. I think that could really harness some of those raw, I think the raw, unfiltered moments that maybe not so flattering, but you know. Okay, we got to end it now. We're up to time. I want you guys to just, plug your website or, social media, whatever it is. I'm Mark Ang. You're probably going to watch this on my YouTube channel. And I also want everyone to tell me their favorite Britney Spears song. Mine is Circus. All right, Mitch.
Yeah, thank you again, Mark, for having me on. I love the conversation, especially how it contributes to culture, FilAm culture, and I love having these conversations. Folks can follow me on my Instagram at Hey Mitch Mitch. I'm also on YouTube, Mitch Lozada, and on Twitter, Maverick Mitch. And my favorite song, it just goes into like the 03s and 04s, Toxic, just because of how iconic it is. And so you can't, I think that's just one of the iconic songs that she had.
Rachel.
Hey, well, I don't really have my social, I'm still trying to navigate through my social media. I do have a podcast. Just watch out for it. I do post it on my Facebook. I do have a podcast where it's just me talking and blabbering about stuff like this, to be honest. But my favorite would have to be just go to the OG, and it's my guilty. I don't want to admit that I follow her and everything because it just seems so weird to me, but because it was my niece's music. But Hit Me Baby One More Time. I'm sorry. It just something about it when it brings me back to that time, and I remember, and I was cute and skinny back then too. So I'm like, yeah, I remember that time. So that would be it for me.
Thank you so much. Great choices. 3 different hits from 3 different eras of Britney. And we're just so happy that she's freed. And we just hope for all the good things for her and for us as a culture to learn from this experience and to never make these mistakes again. Okay, you can catch us on Open Forum also on Mondays at 6 p.m. On PHLV Radio. The 3 of us, along with our other panelists like Tita Josie, will be on to talk about lots of things more on the political spectrum. So thank you guys again. Have a good day, evening, whatever, weekend.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.